Okay, so today we should be able to finish chapter 21, and we should be able to finish chapter 22. There is a very short chapter, and even if you finish early, I would not go into chapter 23. And because the reason to me, I was thinking of it actually this morning, it's such a change of topic, so the change of things for us to think and reason and allow it to digest intellectually and emotionally, sentimentally, that if you keep jumping from things to things, we got lost and end up not reflecting none of them. Because the topic today, as we finish, false prophets in the spiritual world, very interesting, very nice. The second one is not chapters do not separate what God has joined. Completely different topic. And then you go to chapter 23, which is strange morals. Completely thinking. It becomes a fruit salad for us to try to separate the apples from the bananas from the. So hopefully we will be able to finish 22 and be satisfied and have enough to digest for the week to think about it and write down lots of questions for our Q&A. And chapter 22, as we know, there will be false Christs and false prophets. Went through what are the false prophets are, went through what's a prophet, right? And the most important meaning of the word would be basically a messenger, right? Someone who brings a message from the divinity, whatever you call this divinity. Okay, let's call it God. We agree to call it. We're gonna call this divinity as being God. Now, as spiritists, we would reason that the prophets would bring indeed the messages from God, but not necessarily directly hearing the voices of God, but reading the voices of higher spirits, perhaps even from Jesus, as we know is the captain of the ship called Earth, right? And we know that God in his absolutely humbleness always lets someone get credit for it, and does not present himself or herself, whatever you want to, or itself, whatever you call it. So you understand the prophets are the incarnated ones, right? Ostensive mediums that will bring messages from higher spirits. And would talking about false prophets, incarnated ones, would be mediums who would bring messages from low-level spirits. They would bring untruthful messages. And when I say truth and untruthful, is really in relationship to the divine laws that everybody studying right now in the Spirit's book. And as a reference that we can always use to see if it's a true or false message you receive, we can refer. We have the book at our disposition of the moral laws that we study right now in the Spirit's book. We can always refer to Jesus Christ and his teachings to see if those messages are in accordance with the teachings of Christ. So anything that goes contrary or disagreeable to the true teachings of Christ, to the divine laws presented to us in the Spirit's book as spiritists, we would at least put aside, consider the possibility of being false, therefore brought by false prophets, and therefore would not utilize, would reject, because as spiritists, again, we would rather reject 10 truths than accept one lie. And today we will deal with the chapter that deal with the false prophets.
Yes.
In the spiritual world. Let's see what it says.
Okay. Okay. False prophets in the spirit world. Number 10. False prophets are not found only among incarnates. They are also, and in much larger numbers, found among proud spirits who, under the false appearance of love and charity, saw this union and retard the work of humankind's emancipation, infiltrating it with their absurd theories, which they make their mediums believe, and to better fascinate those that want to exploit it in order to give more weight to their theories, they unscrupulously adore themselves with names that humans do not pronounce except with respect. These are spirits who sow the seeds of antagonism among groups, who compel them to isolate themselves from each other and to look at each other with suspicion. This alone should be enough to unmask them, because by acting in such a manner, they themselves offer the most categorical denial of who they claim to be. Blind are those persons, therefore, who allow themselves to fall into such blatant trap. Furthermore, there are many other means for recognizing them. Spirits of the order to which they say they belong must not only be very good, but eminently rational as well. So then, pass their theories through the sieve of reason and common sense, and you will see what remains of them. You will agree with me that every time a spirit indicates as a remedy for the ills of humankind, or as a means of achieving its transformation, utopia and impractical things, or childish and ridiculous measures, or when it formulates as a theory contradicted by the most basic notions of science, it could only be an ignorant and deceitful spirit. On the other hand, you can be sure that...
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, all right.
Okay.
So false prophets in the spiritual world, we're dealing here with, of course, we can say as spiritists, spirits who may make use of mediums, not necessarily all ostensive mediums, but perhaps even us, average medium who can be influenced, who can be inspired by anyone in the spiritual world in accordance to where we vibrate, in accordance to whom we invite as friend, in relation to what we carry in our hearts and in our minds, right? If in the spiritual world associate the planet Earth, the number of discarnated spirit is 3 times the number of incarnated spirits, we can say that likelihood of being influenced by false prophets would be at least 3 times as much as being influenced by individuals, incarnated spirits, right? So the number may be extremely low, may be extremely high, and with our risk and need to be careful, to be vigilant, as Christ suggests, be vigilant and pray, is very much in order for now, especially these days. Those are spirits who, under the false appearance of love and charity, so this union and retarded the work of humankind's emancipation, infiltrating it with their absurd theories. Now, I think it's important that when you use the word, the statement absurd theories, naturally following this statement, the Kardec here brings the necessity to use reason. But let's think of absurd theories. As Jean has reflected last time that we spoke in the story of the book Liberation, those absurd theories, although absurd, although incomparable with the teachings of Christ, although not comparable with the natural laws, it may be sincere. What I mean is that individual who is bringing those absurd theories believe that they are right, believe that they are not really absurd, believe that they are doing good for humanity by bringing those absurd theories because they do not see them as absurd. They see them as something of good. Or, in this case, worse, it may be from opportunistic spirits who are only seeking to get personal gains from whatever they are bringing to us. And this personal gain may be in many forms. They want to be recognized as being the greatest. They want to see that then their names be venerated as special beings. They want to have a statue placed in every squares in this planet because they have this grandiosity thought of themselves, because they want power for many reasons. But they will use those who do not make good use of reason. They use the opportunity of those to spread their absurd theories. So it may be from two classes of false spirits. The ones who spread absurd theories, not understand they are absurd, not understand they are false, but they actually believe they are truth. One of the ways that I was thinking here that we could differentiate those two classes would ask them, okay, so you think this is really good? Would you want that for your loved ones? Would you want them for your daughters, them for your mothers, for your siblings? If they say yes, absolute, because that's the best thing for them. Perhaps those are the ones who spread false beliefs with the belief that they are doing the right thing. And those who would say, no, 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 it's good for everybody else except for my loved ones. Then you know, of course, that you're dealing here with the opportunistic microbes out there, right? When we want to convince people of something, it's always a good idea to big example, use names of individuals that we consider, that you respect, that you have some kind of faith on them, right? If you are into cinematography, if you are into movies, real cinematography, not commercial stuff out there, and you want to find out what is a good movie to watch recently, you would rely more on the suggestions of a reliable cinematographer, someone who studies the art of cinema, and would consider the suggestion more than any Jones or Jones out there was just trying to sell tickets, right? Because that person carries respect for their work, for what they present to you, right? If you like jazz and want to see what is a good jazz club to listen to a good jazz music, you would more likely get the suggestion for someone who studies jazz, who knows jazz, who is involved in the art of jazz music, and we're likely to follow those individuals more than anyone else out there. So if Spirit wants to convince us of the theories, let's say, of moral religious subjects, why not bring names of individuals that we consider to deserve credit in that matter and those subjects? If someone comes to us and say, in the words of St. Francis, considering the suggestion of Gandhi, Mandela, you'd pay attention because those names brings to you the idea of individuals who deserve to be listened in the subjects of moral, religious things, of peaceful things, right? And when they use those names, they will attract us, and they may even convince us to follow them. So that can be done also for good and for bad, right? The differentiation is usually the bad is loud, is aggressive, is imperative, and while the truthful is soft, is gentle. Again, as we had said last week, the false prophets need a very good marketing tool. They need to be convincing. And those true prophets, they don't, because the truth speaks by itself and truth prevails at the end. And so they will use names. The true prophets, you bring true statements without alteration of those venerated names, and the false prophets will alter, you adulter the statements of those venerated historical individuals for their own advantage. With that, they may have the possibility of fascinate us. You will see the word fascination here many times. It's a very important word. There you go. It refers to the resolution created directly by spirit in the thought of a medium, which in a certain manner paralyzes his or her capacity to judge the quality of the communications. Fascinated mediums do not believe themselves to be deceived. This is extremely important. We're going to see this over and over and over again. So fascination is the second degree. Well, it's when let's say burns. Burns has first degree, second degree, third degrees of burn, right? Fascination is a second degree of obsession. Not the most deep, but perhaps the most difficult to be treated. And there is exactly because the medium, the individual, being fascinated by this kind of the spirit, does not believe that that's the case, does not believe that there's nothing wrong. On the contrary, they believe that they are the only one who see the truth. They are the only one who was right, and everybody around them is being mystified, is being deceived. It becomes extremely difficult to reverse that process. Once become fascinated, that the treatment, to reverse that process is quite difficult. It may happen to anyone. Anyone is at risk. Again, pray and be vigilant. Extremely important. Or actually be vigilant and pray. In general, those false prophets, they are well prepared. they're well versed. They come with a full bag of names to use. They will study us, and is specifically for mediums. And as in parentheses over here, this is very applicable for mediums here. You're going to study all this again in the Spirit's book. On the medium's book, Kardec makes references and alerts regarding this, because this topic here is very important for mediums. And of course, it's very important for us who receive the messages from the mediums as well. But mediums is at greater risk because they have greater exposure, so to say, to those force spirits. They can receive more palpable influence of those spirits. So those sensitive mediums have to be extra careful, of course, and because they carry in them that mission, but I don't like to use the word mission because people think something that we're going to do, but they bring them that plan of using that mediumship to be somehow being able to influence individuals towards goodness. But if they don't use it properly, that attribute may be misguided and may actually cause more harm than good. So mediums have to be extra careful. Mediums truly need to educate themselves so they can educate their mediumship, so they can allow that mediumship to be an instrument for the good spirits, for the true prophets, and free from those false prophets. But they are extremely wise. They are intelligent, intellectually very capable. And if you don't use good tools to separate false from truth, we may be deceived. And the number one tool that we have in our hand is reason. Reason, reason, reason. You must apply reason on everything, right? Everything of value, everything of good, and I'm using everything kind of loosely over here because there may be exceptions to the rules, but in general, things of true value, things are really good, takes time to be conquered, requires hard work, perseverance, hardship, requires that we give up some things in order to conquer those things of good, great values. So the first tool that you have in applying reason is if it's too easy, if I don't have to give anything for this, if it's come to my plate like a gift from the gods, I don't know, there's something suspicious here. As they say, if things comes way too easy to us, if someone promises anything to us that all you have to do is just follow these steps over here, just look at Christ's life. Just look at Chico Xavier's life. Just look at Gandhi's life. Just look at Mandela's life. How easy was that? How things just fall on the plates like, a gift from the gods. There was no hardship. They didn't have to give up a lot gain a lot more naturally. So the first thing that you have to consider is a true prophet is not gonna promise the impossible to you. And there is nothing of value that comes like a gift in your plate. If it does, be suspicious, be very careful, right? Everything that is of value, we need to conquer. You have to ourselves, and it requires time, it requires hardship, it requires work, it requires patience, it requires very often being misunderstood, requires very often have kind of swim against the current. When everybody is following A, I know for certain, I know with the intelligence of my heart that A not gonna lead to a good outcome, and I will resist, be a follower of this movement. It takes courage. That's why in my prayers always use the word courage. We need to have courage to resist those influences that very often come from those false spirits. So reason is the first thing. There is no magic bullet. There is no panacea. If someone is suggesting panaceas to bring peace to the world, to save the humanity from cancer, chances are that it's coming from a false spirit. Okay? No comments, can continue?
Okay. On the other hand, you can be sure that if the truth is not always appreciated by certain individuals, it is always appreciated by the good sense of the masses, which is one more criterion. If two principles contradict each other, you will have the measure of their intrinsic worth by seeking out which one enjoys greater significance and more sympathy. In fact, it would be illogical to believe that a doctrine that saw the number of its adherents diminish could be truer than another that sees its number increase. In wanting the truth to reach everybody, God does not confine it within a closed circle. He makes it appear at different points so that everywhere the light may be alongside the darkness.
Thanks.
Okay.
The short passage,
Mhm.
but I think it's important to make a point of being careful here, the statement that yes, there is truth in repetition, right? In our science, we can call a theory will become a law when the experiment is repeated under the same circumstances multiple times and you get the same result. Then it's proved that it will be truthful and it becomes a law, right? So you have law of gravity, law of this, law of that, because when you repeat the experiment under the same circumstances, you get the same result. So yes, there is truth in repetition. And God being absolute love and justice and love all equally would not limit to send the truth only to one little part of the planet, would not limit this truth to be for one group of individuals, would spread it among the whole planet to many. And we said that being truthful, as we see, especially now, they're being able to expand our horizons and look of all the different cultures, and you see in the Hinduism, and you see in the Confucianism, and you see in Christianism, and you see in all of them, common grounds. The truth that is absolute regardless of culture, regardless of religion. If you go in depth and you peel off all the cultures, aspect of of those sacred books and go to the basic moral teachings, we see a common ground, we see the common denominator in all of them. Otherwise, God would give preferential treatment to one or another group, and that God would cease to be God. So the truth is everywhere. But of course, it has to be dressed in accordance to the cultures, in accordance to the so many things that make that culture, including topography, include climate of that region. You know, it has to be dressed somehow. But when you address them, you see the similarity, because the truth is one and only. But as I said before, one thing you need to be very careful when we speak of the truth being carried out everywhere is that I said before, the falsehood, the false prophets, I repeat, needs a very good marketing. They are loud. They are aggressive. They need to convince. They need to be imperative. On the contrary, the true prophets, those who bring the peace, those who bring the true teachings of Christ, with or without mentioning the name of Christ, throughout this world, are peaceful, are calm, are soft, are gentle. They do not seek to impose, they do not seek to be imperative, they do not seek to demand, all contrary to the false prophets. So very often, these statements seem not to be truthful, but that's because of the loudness, of the aggression, of the need to be imperative and imposing of falsehood. So they allow you, or more likely, to hear them, to see them, than the truthful ones who are calm and serene. That you need to go to them, they're not really coming to you. If you see the teachings of Christ, it's extremely rare. There are some in which Jesus went and approached someone. Most of the time, we go to Jesus. And when we go to Jesus, what he does is ask, what do you want? What is it that you want? That is one of the characteristics of the truth and the true prophets. You go to them when you're ready. On the contrary, the false prophets, they are loud and screaming out loud and trying to convince you because they don't have the truth, the essence of the God within us, in our conscience. They have to alter that. They have to kind of close that so we can follow them. So even though this statement is very true, when it says over here, if two principles contradict each other, you have the measure of the intrinsic worth by seeking out which one enjoys greater significance and more sympathy. You say, well, it seems to be the false has the greater sympathy. But in reality, it's because the false is, again, very aggressive, very loud, needs to be out there screaming out loud. And the truth is calm and serene, doesn't have to compete, so to say. We will not compete. As Chico Xavier said, they would never contest those who are very aggressive, accusing him of all kinds of things. Never respond to them. They called him of all kinds of things, and only God knows all kinds of things that he was called of. And when asked, why? Why don't you mean if you are so righteous, why don't you defend yourself? He said, I don't need to defend myself. If what they are saying is truth, nothing can be done against the truth. If what they say is not true, it's a lie, I just don't have time to spend with lies. I have a lot of work to do. That is a true messenger there. No need to compete. On the contrary, the false will put their bravado out loud and combat and do all kinds of things. So even though it appears to us that the statement is false, this statement is very much true. Questions, comments? I think it was important to make this. Because when I first read, I said, oh, wait a minute.
The example of Francis of Assisi, right? Go and preach, and if necessary, use words. Again, yes. The example talks louder than everything else.
Yes. Because especially in those days that we live today, it's this statement, if you don't pay attention to it, you say, I think Kardec did not get this right here. Mm-hmm. Okay, you can continue.
Okay. Mercilessly shun all spirits who present themselves as exclusive counselors, preaching separation and isolation. They are nearly always vain and mediocre spirits who tend to impose themselves on weak and credulous individuals, lavishing exaggerated praise on them in order to fascinate them and keep them under their domination. They are usually spirits eager for power, who has public or private despots during their lifetimes, once more want to have victims to tyrannize after their death. In general, distrust communications that entail a mystical or peculiar character or that prescribe rituals and bizarre actions. There is always a legitimate motive for suspicion in such cases.
Thanks. Again, it's more read. But again, the word fascinate, fascination is here, extremely important. And the word exclusive is a big one. I need to stop here. And at any time that we see that a medium has become an instrument to one and only spirit, that spirit has is holding control of that medium, the likelihood that this medium is under a process of fascination is very high. Not gonna say it is. Case by case, has to be evaluated case by case. But we do not expect the high order spirits would take exclusivity of anyone, of any circumstance by any chance. In itself, it's a statement of selfishness by then and there of that spirit. And if it's a statement of selfishness, take exclusive, this is mine and mine only, right? It's in itself suggests of not being a highly evolved spirit, or even moderately evolved spirit. You may be extremely eloquent, may be extremely brilliant, intellectually speaking, but if she holds someone as a possession, this is mine, it's already a big red flag that should be avoided. And for a spirit, for a medium to accept that position is likely a medium who is being fascinated, and one of the ways of fascination that those smart spirits use is to put that medium on a pedestal, right? Put that spirit as the glorious one, as the chosen one. You know, it's like, my brother, my sister, I came in the name of our Master Jesus Christ, because Jesus sees in you as his chosen servant, the one who will bring his teachings and bring his love to whole humankind. And God or Jesus have chosen you because of your merits, because of the goodness in your heart, and you become fascinated that, wow, he's right. Finally, Jesus recognized the great thing that I am here, right? And you become completely fascinated by that idea. So in reality, that spirit is only using what's there in that medium that is already there. That spirit cannot input those values of grandiosity, those values of the desire of highest recognition. It's already there. All that spirit is doing is augmenting it, is ascending it. It's putting a fire, it's putting more gas on the fire, so to say. Right? Because the spirit, as smart as they may be, they cannot make you what you are not, but they can augment what's already there in us. So in general, distrust communication that entails a mystical, peculiar character or that prescribe rituals and bizarre actions. That's another big thing over here. And as I said, there is no magic potion, there is no magic bullet, there is no panacea. There is no dance, there is no rhythm or music that will resolve all problems. The only thing that resolves all problems is hard work, perseverance, commitment, and ideas of the solution of our problems, of bringing goodness without effort, without hard work, is a huge red flag. Distrust, do not accept, reason, and if eventually you convince that is the way to go, no, if you start tap and dancing in Central Park will save the world. Okay, go. If your reason leads you to believe that that's the solution for peace, go tap dance in Central Park. But most of us would reason that that's not really the way to go. Okay.
That's one thing that also we should pay attention. You know, the true evolved spirits, their message is concise, is direct to the point. When you have someone claiming to be a superior spirit, sending 100 different books with different messages, you know, it becomes suspicious, right? And I've seen this out there, right? A course that has 15, 100, 200 page books with the different instructions dictated by one spirit to one medium. That's very hard to accept as really the truth. So that's also a sign that we have to pay attention, right? You read the messages from Emmanuel. They're short and direct. They don't waste space and time.
Yeah, one of the peculiarities of Higher Spears is that ability to put in a few words what would require for most of us 4 or 5 pages that they can put in one paragraph, a message that would take us a few pages. It is because of their intellectual abilities, the absolutely control of the language that they use. That's why it's very often difficult to read. because they have that complete domain of that language. They know how to write it, and they have this extensive lexicon that can bring words that we need to go to the dictionary, and we need to go to the dictionary if you understand them. Most of us, because they are concise, they are frugal with words, they are frugal with their time and respecting our time. And again, if it's good, it requires some work from our side. And those good messages require some work from our sides for us to get to understand it. For example, to make use of a good dictionary. Okay.
Okay. On the other hand, you may be sure that whenever a truth must be revealed to humankind, it is, so to speak, communicated instantaneously to all serious groups that have serious mediums, and not to this or that group to exclusion of all others. No one is a perfect medium if obsessed, and there is a manifest obsession whenever a medium is able to receive communications from only one particular spirit, no matter how high it tries to place itself. Consequently, all mediums or groups who believe themselves to be privileged by communications that only they can receive, or who are subject to practices that emphasize suspicion, are undoubtedly under the influence of a well-characterized obsession, especially when the dominating spirit adores itself with a name that everybody, both spirit and incarnate, should honor and respect, and not allowed to be degraded by any time. It is incontestable that by submitting all spirit phenomena and communications to the crucible of reason and logic, it would be easy to reject absurdity and error. One medium can be fascinated and one group deluded. However, the strict assessment by other groups, the knowledge acquired, the high moral authority of group leaders, communications of the principal mediums who receive a stamp of logic and authenticity from our best spirits, will render rapid justice to these deceitful and cunning communications originated by a horde of deceitful and evil spirits.
Okay, so I think we covered this, most of it. Again, there is equality. God does not have preferential treatment for one other group. If a message has to be brought, it will be communicated instantaneously to all serious groups that have serious medium, and not to this or that group to the exclusion of all others. We can extend that it will be spread throughout the globe. It will be presented as it can be presented. It will be dressed, that's those messages will be dressed in accordance to the cultures of that people, to the religions, to the beliefs of those peoples, okay? But the essence, the moral value, the teaching there will be common to all, will be equal. It is up to us again, hard work, to remove, to peel off the cultural aspects, everything else, and get to the essence, to the truth, and you see the commonality, Otherwise, God will have preferential treatment. Okay. And again, the issue of exclusion, there is no exclusivity. No group is the chosen one. Okay. Now, open again a parenthesis, it's maybe possible, and I'm thinking out loud here, and correct me if I'm wrong, that one group has, through their own effort, evolved a little above the average. And therefore, those people are able to receive messages that others are not able to receive yet. Okay. You always like to make an example using academics, right? And math is easy for us to understand. We cannot come and start teaching calculus to a group of individuals who does not know trigonometry. It's not going to work. If a teacher comes to a classroom and start teaching calculus to a group who never seen trigonometry, it's going to be a failure. That teacher is, first of all, very wrong to bring that to that group, and will likely pay a very high price for it, for that serious mistake. But for those who have learned all the necessary prerequisites for calculus, the teacher will bring calculus, and you will be well received, and you will be made the proper use of that tool, because now they can carry over. So it is possible that one or another group have put enough effort to get the necessary prerequisites to receive the message the others have not gotten yet. The coming of Jesus Christ would only make sense for in a group who had already understood monotheism, accepted monotheism. The teachings of Christ on a polytheistic society would not make much sense, would have no chance of being accepted. But coming to this monotheistic group, receive those messages, now those messages could be spreaded from that group outwards for those who are ready to receive. So it's important to make the separation here, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it is possible that one or another message as an exception may be given to one group and not to another. But that's because that group has merit, that gained the unnecessary prerequisites to get that new lesson, i.e. calculus, for those who already know trigonometry. And if you already know trigonometry, it's because you already know simple arithmetics, you already know fractions, you already know equations of first, the second degree, and so forth and so on, until you can get to calculus. So it is possible that those who have merit that, get that, now gain the merit and the responsibility to pass it along. Okay.
And also, even if those groups, are more advanced in the sense of moral advancement, because that's in the end the difference, right? It's moral and knowledge. One characteristic of that we have to look is they will continue to share and work together with others. Isolation is a big red flag, and when you see a group that only works by themselves and only think that what they achieve and they receive is useful, and everyone else, all the others are inferior or less or not appropriate, or that's a big red flag. And we see that in unfortunately, even in the Spiritist movement, we see groups that isolate themselves, that work thinking that they have the whole truth, and that's really dangerous, and that's a big sign of fascination.
Yeah, and again, for those who have learned more, had received more, they have automatically received the responsibility of passing along, to share it along. The whole teachings of Christ is of charity. There is not more charitable than that. You didn't learn anything for yourself. You learned to pass it over. And that is a responsibility that you assume with progress. Progress gives you that responsibility, intellectual and moral. Having the moral, you'll be easier to pass the intellect because now you feel the need to share. Again, it's the man on Plato's cave, right? Once he got the light, he needs to go back and share the possibility of the light to everyone else. No, everyone else you take or not. But the possibility of conquering the light is there for everyone else. Putting that everyone have to put the effort as well. Now it's very important here from whom this message comes from. Erastus, disciple of St. Paul. And we have learned that Erastus is the spirit that have assumed the responsibility of leading the mediums here. Is the one who is, let's say, the minister in this great government. When Jesus is the governor, Erastus assumed the responsibility of leading leadership. That's why you see Erastus as the main I'm not going to say author, I don't know what the word, the one who responds for the medium's book and bring all the messages of Erastus you see here in the Gospel according to Spiritism is related to mediumship. This is a topic that is for all of us, naturally, we are all mediums, but it carries tremendous weight for the more extensive mediums. All right. Any comments, questions?
Elmo, this is Carol. May I ask a question?
Please.
Yes, for example, Erastus. I am not familiar with Erastus. However, do you think that Allan Kardec had a team of mediums who tried to really thoroughly discern the value of these messages, for example, from Erastus?
Yes, I do. And we know that that's the case. But we have to keep in mind that Kardec was working basically with a empty canvas, right? All those mediums that Kardec worked with did not have the codification, right? They were the instruments for the codification, basically. So it's almost, if you can say that those mediums that Kardec made use of did not have all the knowledge that Kardec was bringing to us. They were more of an empty bank. So you have to consider here that they themselves would have to have a good bag of moral values. And I say a good bag of moral values because you know that some of them had problems later on. Some of them was complaining that they did not get the names written in the books. We know if you go to the history of the codification, some of the mediums that Kardec used have quite kind of challenged Kardec of why I didn't get any recognition, why my name was not. And Kardec explained to them was to protect them, was to save their skin, basically. Kardec have chose to do that. And you see but those myths themselves, they were the ones was bring us teachings that they did not know themselves, because the books are not there yet, right? But in order to be able to be instrumental of such a valuable teachers, they had to have a good baggage of moral values, at least to be able to accept to do it. Can we imagine at 1850s, break off of all impositions of especially of the church and assume that yes, I'm a medium, I receive thoughts from the spirits and I'm gonna allow them to use to bring this doctrine. That in itself is pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. So likelihood that yes, the answer is yes. But keep in mind that they were learning something that was just coming out. It's the third revelation. And they were bringing to us that third revelation. It was not being revealed before, which to me gives them tremendous amount of credit. Even knowing that they are human beings like you and I, capable of making mistakes, capable of want some share of some recognition and this and that, because again, just a human like you and I. But they did accept a risk, at least the minimal risk commitment, bring those messages to us. And I actually like to see what John thinks of that.
Thank you, Elmo. Appreciate the information. Thank you.
Carol, and the methodology that Kardec used, which is it's something also that we have to understand. He received messages from hundreds of mediums. So, because like Elmo said, we didn't, the mediums didn't have any understanding and knowledge of the process. They just, it was just in the very beginning. So they were just receiving messages. So Kardec will compile the messages from different mediums. Also, Kardec sent questions to the mediums for the mediums to ask the spirits. And he would never publish something that had come only from one medium, one spirit. He would use different sources, same question, different mediums, and the agreement in the messages, in the answers, is when he would use them in the codification. Of course, there are messages from spirits that are signed, but again, these are part of the process of understanding the teachings and the messages received from different spirits, different mediums. So it's different nowadays that we have the codification and we receive messages from spirits, and we have one medium, and then we have to analyze the message, because we are not building something in most cases, right? A doctrine or codifying a doctrine. So that's the difference of what Kardec did at the time. He wouldn't accept messages received by one spirit, one medium, without going through different mediums and comparing to different messages, so that he could go ahead and publish the information.
Great, thank you for clarifying. Appreciate it.
Okay, let's see what Jeremiah says about the false prophets.
Yes. Jeremiah and the false prophets. This is what the Lord of hosts says. Do not listen to the words of prophets who prophesy and deceive you. They publicize the visions of their hearts and not what they have learned from the mouth of the Lord. They say to those who blaspheme, the Lord says to you, you shall have peace, and to all those who walk in the corruption of their hearts, no evil will touch you. But who amongst them has heeded the counsel of God, who has seen him and listened to what he has said? I have not sent such prophets. They run by themselves. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesy from their own head. I have heard these prophets. prophesy lies in my name, saying, I dreamed, I dreamed. And how long would this fantasy be in the hearts of prophets who prophesy lies, and who prophecies are only the deceptions of their own hearts? Therefore, if these people or prophet or priest asks you and says, what is the burden of the Lord? Say, you yourselves are the burden, and I shall cast you far from me, says the Lord. It is this passage from the prophet Jeremiah that I would like to discuss with you, my friends. Speaking through Jeremiah, God says, it is a vision of their own hearts and makes them speak. These words clearly indicate that at that time, charlatans and impassioned persons abused the gift of prophecy and exploited it. Consequently, they abused the simple, nearly blind faith of the people by predicting good and agreeable things in return for money. This type of fraud was very widespread within the Jewish nation, and it is easy to understand that. In their ignorance, the poor were unable to distinguish good prophets from bad ones, and were more often than not deceived by these so-called prophets, who were nothing more than impostors or fanatics. There is nothing more significant than these words. I have not sent such prophets. They run by themselves. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesy. Furthermore, he says, I have heard these prophets who prophesy lies in my name, saying, I dreamed, I dreamed. This points out one of the ways they used in order to exploit the trust, the trust the people had in them. Always credulous, the multitude did not even think about contesting the veracity of these dreams or visions. He found it very natural and were always inviting such prophets to speak. After Jeremiah's words, listen to the wise counsels of the Apostle John when he said, do not believe all spirits, but test the spirits to see if they are from God. For amongst the invisible, there are also those who love to delude when they get the chance. The deluded are obviously mediums who do not take enough precautions. This is unquestionably one of the biggest obstacles upon which many mediums stumble, especially if they are new to Spiritism. It is a trial for them, and they can triumph over it only by using great prudence. Therefore, before anything else, learn to distinguish between good and evil spirits, so that you yourselves do not become false prophets. They protect the spirits, Carlson, in 60.
Thanks. Okay, so the first asterisk is important for to make here is, and Emmanuel leaves that very clearly in the Consoler, the book. But we see here the Jewish people, we see the Hebrews, it's a representation of humans. So in reality, we can change the word Jewish people to us, because it's talking about us here, okay? It is talking about our moral progress at one point, and intellectual, at one point when we are a lot more gullible than what we are today. And again, the human race, the Jewish people, that is a symbol, is a representation of the whole human race, not picking in one group. We're not bashing one group. This is extremely important. I make note of this. Okay. And we see that it is interesting that we can equal prophets to mediums, right? We spiritists. And we see that the Moses prohibited to speak to their people to speak to the dead, but did not prohibit prophecy. The prophecy continued. The prophecy could be a true, real prophecy, or be a true messenger, someone who indeed bring messages from the high up, or those who bring the mess for their own hearts, right? it's the vision of their own hearts that makes them speak. So does it mean that it's purely from themselves? Again, I said that we make associations from what's in our heart. We choose the friends that we have in accordance to what we brew in our hearts. Sentiments produce thoughts, thoughts produce actions, thoughts is energies that creates an attraction of others to gravitate around us, but all emanates from the heart. Okay, so when the Jeremiah says that they speak from their own heart, they express what they have in their heart, being that is themselves speaking, or what they brew in their heart attract spirits. Since they are medium, they will express the thoughts of those spirits in accordance what they have in their hearts. Okay, so it's very important that you make that separation over here. Okay, and since we at that time were lacking the moral values, we're lacking the codification. If I sometimes think maybe the whole humanity should start with the codification. It should be the other way around. Let's start with codification right now. It's impossible, of course, right? But if we all had a codification right from the beginning, perhaps things would be a little bit easier. And since we were essentially materialistics, the value of material things was still greater than the value of the eternal things, and that's the necessity of Christ come and bring us the second revelation, right? We could be easily be misdirected, be guided towards things that bring material gains, material values. And someone who promised this or that thing of material gains would likely convince us to follow them. Hence, another reason that Moses had to curb talk to the spirits, with good reason. But it's important to notice that it states right here, mediumship always existed, and we always exist. Mediumship is going to be a tool used by mediums, by spirits, for all purposes, for all objectives. It is all in accordance with what they want to gain from it. The higher order spirits wants to gain nothing, and they wants to pass it along to us, things of good value. The low order spirits, who we will also use, mediumship is a tool, but they will use for the personal gain. And again, the personal gain may be of many different kinds. They just maybe want a recognition. They just want to gain the ability to control the masses. They just feel good about it. But always of a personal gain somehow. Always existed, and the only way to eliminate it is through education. The only way to get rid of the false prophet is when we elevate ourselves morally enough that in our heart there will be nothing that will produce the kinds of thoughts that will attract the false prophets towards us. We will be, saying, create an armor of protection with the values of the things that you have in our heart, because now there will be only room and space for the higher spirits to be with us, to guide us towards goodness. So it all comes from indeed for what we have in our heart. Again, sentiments produce thoughts. Thoughts is energy. That energy will attract those in accordance to what we have in our heart. And that is the greatest value of the second revelation, again, the coming of Jesus. And just the last paragraph is extremely equally important. Jeremiah's come is in the first revelation, or the first testament, or the Old Testament, which to me is inappropriate to use the word old. But then comes John in the second revelation, in the gospel of the second revelation, of the teaching of the gospel of Christ. It says, do not believe all spirits, but test the spirits to see if they are from God. Also, reinforce and alert us, yes, we can be influenced by spirit. Yes, there is communicability between the two spheres of our existence, the physical and the spirit. And yes, those in the spirit's world, they are not all angels. They may bring falsehoods, so we must test them to see if they are from God. And all of us can be influenced. All of us have that need to be careful, to be vigilant, to pray. Even the more experienced can be targeted. Can you imagine the less experienced? And we see today, amongst very experienced, very knowledgeable, very well educated individuals, even in the Spiritist doctrine, become prey to those extremely eloquent spirits who target something that they have in themselves that can be used to deceive them, to misdirect them. If those very eloquent, very well educated mediums have lost their way, we need to be extra careful. And again, we are all mediums, all of us. All right, comments, questions? Wow. It's 22.
Let's stop here, right?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, because again, the second top chapter 23 is 22, I'm sorry, is do not separate what God has joined, which is, I'm sure of interest of most of us. Is the shortest chapter in this book. It'll be easy to, well, I thought it'd be easy. That one reading also, it took the whole time. But I'll leave that for next week. It's a very interesting chapter, and I think a lot of good discussion should come from it, if people are willing to discuss, of course.
Yeah, we're going to do that on the last Sunday of April. April has 5 Sundays. So we'll come back to the gospel on the last Sunday of April.
Okay.
And next Sunday, which is the 3rd Sunday, we're going to study the Medium's book. We did the introduction last month. We're going to start studying it properly. Okay.
Okay.
Carol, can you do our final prayer? Carol?
Sorry, my mute was stuck. I don't know. Sorry about that. Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, John. Thank you, Sarita, for reading. And thank you for participation by everyone. And happy Easter. Infinite Spirit, infinite creator and supreme intelligence, we are grateful again to be together as brothers and sisters for our study of the gospel according to Spiritism, our chapter being false prophets. False prophets are found in both the physical world and the spiritual world. Truth can be found everywhere. False prophets need to convince and do so through good marketing, exaggeration, and loudness. They tend to be aggressive in their approach. The truth, however, is calm, serene, and concise, and has no need to convince, but it shows up through example, which is precise in language and communication. Test the spirits to see if they are from God. Goodness comes through discernment, reason, and diligent effort, mediumship, and group work, and in a community especially, can share in this progress and education. This will attract the high order spirits. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, the good spirits, for guiding us and inspiring us today. May we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ within us, and also for our loved ones, our directors, our counselors, our mediums, and the workers. We pray for inner peace and currently, especially for world peace and for those who are suffering deeply in the physical world and spiritual worlds. May they be assisted in divine right timing on all levels. We pray for SGNY and Spiritist centers throughout the world to continue to grow, expand, and to be protected each day. As we close, we humbly ask now for safety, protection, as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. We offer Easter blessings, Passover blessings, and blessings to all in humanity at this time. May we go forth now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light. Go forth in peace, in love, and in service. So be it.